So I got the U-bolts on, I got the sway bar link added, and as soon as I put the tire on and drop it down, this will line up enough for me to bolt it in. I have the top of the leaf springs and the bottom leaf springs just kind of barely bolted in, you know, still kind of loose. So when I drop everything down and everything tightens up, I can you know, torque it down to factory specs. Anyway, I got the brake line, you know, where it drops it down a bit more as well. So we should be good to go. Alright, got all the bolts in place. I'm not going to tighten it up all the way, remember, until it gets until we put the tire on and drop it back down, because the everything needs to sit in place before you tighten it down all the way. So right now I'm just going to leave it, you know, snug so it's not going to fall apart when I put it down, but I'll torque it down to where it's supposed to be at once I get down to the bottom. Rear shocks are super simple. All it has is the bolt up at the top, which is a 19mm, and then it has the bolts down here, which are 19mm as well. Just pop a wrench on this side and then do the ratchet on this side. And yes, I do it with the car on the ground, just because, you know, without the high-tech lift equipment and stuff like that, it's just a lot safer to do it when it's on the ground. Anyway, so yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay, so we're replacing the shocks on a 91 Jeep Wrangler. This works for any of the YJs. Basically you have, I better show you on the shock, it's mounted already. So you have the shock right there, you got the bottom bolt, you got the top bolt, that's on the passenger side of the vehicle. So both of these are 19mm. I've already taken these ones out, so that's what that looks like. Here, just kind of got the washer and the nut, and then a little spacer right there that you can put the top of the shock on. So the shock usually comes pre-bound like this with a little ribbon holding it in place. You're going to want to mount the bottom end of it, which is this end over here, in place before you break that ribbon, because it's pretty hard to compress them once they're uncompressed. And then when you do it, the top end will kind of spring out a little bit, and you just want to line it up with the top of the mount. And I'll kind of show you how to do that. Okay, so I cut that ribbon and expanded up into the Jeep. You know, these things are pretty strong, so I had to kind of manhandle it on that little bolt there. Anyways, once you get it most of the way on and you can get this nut there, you just tighten that snug, and then it'll push it, as you can kind of see, it's a little gap right there, but as you tighten it, it'll pull the whole shock into the car. So when I do it, I like to have the letters and stuff facing outward, so that, you know, the next guy, when he comes along, he can read what part number it is, you know, not to use heat on the bolts or anything like that. Pretty straightforward. To get the bolts off, sometimes it helps you have a breaker bar. And then some people like to say that the shocks need like a boot or a sleeve to protect that. With my research that I've done online, you know, yeah, it's nice and yeah, it helps, but you know, you don't need it in every case. A lot of the shocks are designed, they're kind of, they're designed to not let dirt and stuff inside of them right there. So these ones should be fine without the boot. But you know, some people like them for aesthetic purposes as well. Anyway, that's how you put shocks on a YJ Jeep Wrangler. Alright, so we have to relocate the track bar. So that's the track bar right there. And this is a 55, well, it's a T55 bit that goes in this end, and then the nut on the other side is a 21mm. And so you just got to take off the track bar on this side, and then there's going to be a little bracket that sits a little bit above it, so that the track bar can sit where it normally sits but still touch the axle because of the lift. Okay, so when you're doing the track bar, I find that it's easier to attack it from the nut end of it over here on this side, because these star bolts are pretty freaking worthless when you're trying to torque them or twist them at all. So I use, you know, just a big wrench to kind of hold that one in place, but I do all my twisting from over here on this end. That way I don't damage that bolt and I can use it again later. So now we're going to extend up the track bar on the rear. You have this little thing right here. I've already put the crush sleeve in it. Basically this thing Slides right down inside that little bracket, just like that. And it's bolted in on the back right there through that hole. And then there's another bolt supplied that goes through the top right there. So I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so you do have to put in the star bolt and the crush sleeve before you can tighten down that bolt in the back there. The bolt in the back is a 13mm on either side. And I just have the top bolt in to hold the track bar in place. So as you tighten that bottom bolt on the bottom there, it pulls the whole thing down so it keeps it tight. So that's why you have to have it in this order, otherwise the holes won't line up when the bolt is all the way tight. So that's what it looks like. So getting the bolts off the axle is pretty simple. This one just had a 19mm bolt at the bottom, and you just got to ratchet it off. Having a very large breaker bar helps out a ton, especially with these older Jeeps that are kind of rusted on there. Okay, so I've jacked up the car in 2 places, one underneath the back, the other right on the edge of the frame. I'm just kind of supporting the car, you know, more in one spot, because if this thing falls over, you're gonna have some serious problems. But anyway, taking off the leaf springs right now. I have 1-inch wrench on the back, and on this Wrangler, that wrench size is a 22mm. And then on the front bolt where the socket's at, that's a 21mm. And so with the back wrench, just with the way that I'm twisting, this twists around that way, and so the wrench is pinned up against the transfer case mount. So whenever I turn this, the wrench keeps the other bolts steady, because they need to spin independently of each other. So that's what's getting that bolt off. Okay, so we're into another problem where this doesn't quite line up with that. The bolt won't go through the holes. So what I've done is that needs to come this direction. So I have the same, you know, contraption. Kind of jerry-rig this whole thing. And as I click this, that'll come towards me, which will give me enough room, hopefully, to line up that bolt. There you go, it's in. Now, when you're putting this on, make sure that this wedge right here, the thicker part is always towards the front. And then when you're tightening in the bolts on the leaf springs, don't tighten them all the way until the vehicle's, you know, all the way back down on the ground. Then you'll be able to. That way, because everything will reposition a little bit once it has the full weight on the springs again. Okay, so this is the rear side, just kind of the finished, what it looks like. So you got the leaf springs tied in on the shackles in the back. You have the bump stop, and you can see how on the left side there it's kind of just tacked in with that U-bolt. Got the U-bolts in place, and got the track bar mount placed a little bit higher up. And then just the bolts on the bottom of the U-bolts there. And so that's what each of the back sides looks like. Alright, that's the finished Jeep. Got the bigger tires on there, got the 4-inch lift on it. So yeah, if you have any questions, you know, be sure to ask. I usually put up videos, you know, a couple times a week. So if you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. Like if this helped you. I do like to get feedback and stuff on, you know, how much it helps people. And then, yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks.